Hello and welcome to this part 2 of chapter 2. This is going to be about feelings. I want to make a little bit longer video going a little bit more into detail. We are talking about thought is a system, right? And the system has many parts that we can distinguish. The whole idea with the system is that they are much more connected, and in fact that they are much more one than they are presenting themselves. One of the parts we talk about is, of course, feelings. And I want to use this example of feelings to show the depth of the system and perhaps show why we don't understand it quickly. So this part is treated quite thoroughly, and I'm worried that the video will be quite long. We will see. This connection between feelings and thoughts and feelings, it may be for many people the area where we long for insights, something to disentangle this tiresome phenomenon and thought and feeling having a conflict. It's very uncomfortable for many people, the area of feelings, and probably it has been like this for thousands of years. So we live with these thoughts and feelings, but we never quite work it out. Why is it that we cannot sort it out? And in this seminar, David Bohm treats it quite thoroughly, what is actually happening. It's spread out through the chapters, but in chapter 2 I think the main parts are there. So there are good reasons for why we don't easily work it out. In general, Bohm also suggests that the area of psychology, in general, it wouldn't tell you what to look at. It would definitely tell you about how to stabilizing whatever you are suffering from or whatever your disorder might be. So finding ways of stabilizing your situation, your condition, is definitely part of psychology. But they are not necessarily showing us what to look at, the process of feelings and thought. I also want to say that although this review or summary is about feelings, it's not necessarily about trauma. Trauma is discussed thankfully a lot in our society presently, but this is a little bit more about the feeling component. So in trauma, feeling is of course much involved, but there is also a learned behavior there, a coping mechanism. There's a forced route or forced way of behavior that we have adopted at some point. Probably we had a no choice situation involved when we were young. So the first thing that Bohm points out is that feelings are such that there are certain thoughts behind them. That is an important first part. When we find those thoughts, we also find that we don't want to give them up. So what happens is that wanting to get rid of our uncomfortable feelings, or wanting to get rid of feelings like fear or anxiety, is very much tied to the thoughts behind them, the thoughts that we wish to keep. So therefore now we are looking at the process, not the content, not the meaning of a particular feeling. Not what does the feeling or the thought mean. We are just looking at the order of it to learn what is actually going on. As we have mentioned before, thought has divided thinking, feeling, body, action, and surprisingly enough, feeling has no obvious place in that division. It is neither rational, it is not active in action, it actually just feels. It doesn't communicate, it is not a good idea, it doesn't have a clear action. Where is it going? So, the role of feeling, as we shall see, is rather to hold on to. To hold on to, not to yield, but to hold on to what is considered to be necessary, not to give in. I got this image of, I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Ring, where Gandalf stands on the bridge and says, "You shall not pass." Feelings are like that, like the last outpost, the last station. You shall not go any further than this. The feeling cannot yield. So, the first thing we need to see is that there are certain thoughts behind the feelings, and we need to bring them out in order to see the process. Thought works in such a way that in this case it is hiding the thought behind the feeling. And we want a situation where the process, thought, feeling, is moving slowly, so we can see the movement. We don't want it to stop entirely, because then nothing is happening. And we don't want it to be so fast or overwhelming that everything just becomes panic or a blur. So we want to be able to feel the discomfort, the anxiety, we want to feel it enough so that we can look at the connection between the word, the feeling, the sensation in the body, and what thought is trying to do about it. So we have to say that we are learning, and if we say anything more, we will start to go wrong again. Feelings are often described as we have a sort of stuckness. People may think that or feel that they have been stuck in a certain pattern for years. Yes? So, sometimes we have an event, we have a perception of something. Might be a trivial thing or a serious thing, but that is not the point. The point is that in the system, a reflex is triggered. And in general, this reflex, which is a thought, I don't want to lose my job, or I must have money, a reflex is triggered. We don't know exactly which one. But generally, there is a very strong pull or desire to hold on to the thought because something is very important about it. So we might think it's dangerous to give it up. And behind this, there is a more general thought, like we want to avoid danger or heights, or we want to avoid situations. So one factor is that because we like security, safety, order so much, that we become overwhelmed by, for instance, anxiety, nervousness, fear. So building up structure, order, rigid safety, security, it lays the foundation for fear. That is one of the points that Bohm wants to point out. I don't want to give up my current situation, security, pleasure, greed, envy, anger, so on. And then the instinct becomes not to look at those thoughts that are behind the feelings, because questioning these thoughts is going to result in the opposite of what we want. We rarely see what is actually going on step by step. So the first insight then is that there is a thought behind the feeling. It might not be seen, and most likely it doesn't want to be questioned. So Bohm encourages us to fish around for the thoughts that we have learned to suppress or overlook, or that we simply are unaware of. This connection between thought and feeling that we are overlooking, the sense of connection that we are trying to discover, is a sensitivity to what is actually there. If we become sensitive to what is actually there, we might be able to perceive what is happening. So, Bohm exemplifies a difference between how the body operates in general and thought. He brings out the concept of proprioception. It says the body is proprioceptive. This, in a very simple form, means that if you're burning your hand on the stove, it's because you touched the stove. So the hand is removed and it's automatic. You don't have to think about it. You know the cause of the pain and you know the effect of the pain, and you end it. That's finished. But this is not the case when we are talking about feelings. We don't see the thought behind it. We don't see the thought that is touching the stove, if we can put it that way. We don't see the thought, so we don't see the connection. So we have a belief in cause and effect, but in this case, the cause is not present. And because we don't see the cause, we see the effect, and we try to modify the effect. We try to perhaps get rid of the effect, the feeling. So, therefore, a sensitivity towards such a connection between the first thought and the feeling, just like the hand on the stove, is part of intelligence. And Bohm says this is unfortunately not the path that thought has taken in its development. So what exactly is the path that thought has chosen? Yeah. The thing we can see, or is what Bohm points out, that thought has hidden itself in the sense that it doesn't show up. Rather, we go straight to the feeling very quickly, and it becomes intense, and then we want to get rid of it. Thought shows up only in the act of trying to act upon the feeling. When we learn to drive a car, all the thoughts about everything becomes hidden. We don't want to think that is a sign, that is a stop line, that is another car. It becomes automatic. So therefore, Bohm says it's very puzzling what to look at, because the most important part has gone into hiding. And we wish to keep it, as in the case of what we feel is necessary. So here we are learning a skill of letting the process slow down, show itself, so we can see it. Now, because when we are thinking about it, the thought that we wish to see is not visible, therefore we must look at it while it's actually so. We are able to re-trigger feelings. The pattern will be the same whether there is a real danger approaching us or whether we are simulating it, re-feeling it again. So once we see the thought behind the feeling, we might wonder, why did that particular thought come up? We have a brain that is very good at associating things. So why does the system react with exactly that particular reflex of nervousness or worry? And here Bohm brings in the example of thought sorting or um, itself, it's sorting itself in certain patterns or orders. He talks about categories of general and particular things. So for instance, a table, we know very well what is a table, but we can see thousands of different shapes and feel that, okay, the reflex, the name that is triggered by these things is a table. So that means that anything that resembles a table will do to trigger that reflex. Then, once the reflex is triggered, the system is like the power plug in the wall. It fires up the thoughts, it gives further direction. The system fires up the feelings, it's uncomfortable, and we now have an original thought that has somehow gone into hiding. We have the feeling, we have the task of dealing with the feeling, and we can see that the first feeling caused it, but we cannot see how to get rid of it. Getting rid of the feeling doesn't work if we are blind to the fact that the first thought caused the feeling, which is usually the case. So I think this metaphor of or similarity with the ideas of thought and effect, cause and effect, is very good. If you don't see the cause, you only have the effect to deal with. So you have an effect and a modification or a solution. So one insight here is that if I touch a stove with my finger, I instantly remove my finger because the body is proprioceptive. The body operates in this way. But when it comes to getting rid of the uncomfortable feeling, thought doesn't see that it caused it. So the task of getting rid of it becomes a puzzle, unless we see that the thought came up as a reflex. So here we have several of the parts working together: reflex, thought, feeling. So he says, if what we have mentioned so far is not clear, then thought tries to think more and more about the situation, which people who suffer from emotional problems or distress are very familiar with. You can't stop thinking. Hours, days, weeks, you churn over the problem. So we try to think more about the situation. And one thing that might happen is that we find another thought that generates other reflexes that are more comfortable. So we feel comfort. Or maybe someone says to you, you don't have to worry about that, you're a nice person. But that is a form of self-deception. It's deceptive in the sense that the reflex and the feeling, they are still there. Yeah. And in the future they might react in the same way. A minute or a week later. So one further difficulty with looking at it in this way is that what seems to be the situation is that we want to get rid of a feeling. But what is actually happening is that a thought is triggering a feeling. So wanting to get rid of an uncomfortable feeling is not the right way. We have to go through it in the correct way, and we have to look at the thought behind it. So in general, we think that the first burst of the system is pure feeling. So we really need to experiment with this and slow it down and find words for and be explicit about the thoughts that are making this feeling occur. And this is the thing we don't do with feelings. We don't see the thought that comes first. That's why they are so problematic. If we slow it down, we see it. If we stick to it, we will begin to actually perceive it. That is the idea. Mm. So, as so very often, Bohm has this interesting, of course, depth of his thinking, of his inquiry, of his observations. And he says, what about this reflex? Why does it happen? We mentioned a little bit about the different kinds of objects that can trigger the table reflex. But what he chooses to call it, he says that the reflex is arbitrary. It has no necessity. And this is one of the important ways in which thought deviates from intelligence. Intelligence is inherently coherent. It fits together. But when it comes to thought, the steps that are happening often follow an arbitrary path. We have what he calls felts, registered old feelings. We have various kind of memories. And important in this discussion, we have our view on what is necessary. I'm a little bit worried the video is getting dark. It's very, very sunny outside and it's creating an unwanted shade here. So that is one thing to think about, that thought and feeling move in an arbitrary way. It's difficult to follow why these reflexes are triggered. And Bohm says further that in neuroscience, measurements have been made in the brain, showing that sometimes the brain bypass certain stages or steps, as for instance the thought. If there is a real danger, the information goes straight to the center where feeling takes place. So if there is real danger, we go more straight, but it's the same process nevertheless. So he encourages us to put into words the exact feelings we have. First, we will find that we don't want to do it because we want those thoughts to be there. What we are much more likely to want is to try to escape it. The mind instinctively moves in any direction that makes it more comfortable, which is correct sometimes, but most of the times it's not. And if we want to see what is actually going on, then escaping the situation is not going to help us at all. So that was quite a lot of information, and it was merely the first step. The second step, Bohm begins to describe like this. He says that there is a judgment going on in the system about what is true and what is real. If you consider something to be real, or if the reflex considers something to be real, then you become engaged in it. We are engaged in reality. We can be engaged in fantasy, of course, as well. But the principle is that if we find something to be true and real, then we engage in it. Now, if we look back, one situation where we really engaged in what is true and real is when we were a child, what our parents said. So we have perhaps this innocent feeling that what our parents say must be real and true when we are young. So we have the effect that my father has on me, or that my mother have. And we accept that what they say is true. We have to do this, even if we have no special interest in it ourselves. And sometimes we see this as deeply disturbing when we, for instance, see children that are deeply involved in, for instance, a sectarian belief system or something. But the process is the same as with other things. Children pick this up And if we are caught in this as children, it's understandable. But as adults, we are not children anymore. But the program, the reflexes, the information, the system is still running that way. I might say I don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want it anymore. But we still have it. We still have an identity. What I was when I was a child, I have to be now also. I have to be kind, nice, polite. I have to eat up. I think I have to listen to others. I have to stand in line. Whatever it might be, these things, these orders of what is necessary are still operating within the system. And Bohm points out, even if you have something false, it will also operate with the same mechanism. Now, if you see it for yourself, in the process, observe it, in the process of your own thought and feeling, first, we begin to accept the insecurity and the discomfort around it all, the inclination we had previously to always run away from the situation or our feelings throughout our life. It's not so strange given the fact that as children we didn't have much choice. So we have an option here that the judgment of what is real and what is true might be made by our sensitivity or intelligence. That is one side of it. We can re-look at it. Is this true? Is this real? Yes. Or we can let the system handle it, accepting it as a reflex. We continue to be conditioned as an Englishman or whatever our tendencies are. So that is the one insight, that intelligence operates differently. In intelligence, there it is free. There is freedom to change the order of what is necessary. So if you've heard that water or a lake, it doesn't resist what is happening. It's necessary to move forward, but if it's not possible, the order of what is necessary will change. It will take another route or path. It is not going to be stuck there. But the machine, the system, the reflexes, they are stuck in the sense that what is necessary has to operate in a certain way. As long as the system has authority to pass the judgment of what is real and true, it will run like a machine. It will try to overrun everything else. It is not interested in, or it's not taking intelligence into account. We will continue to think and feel as we've always done, and the system will continue to run us. Therefore, it's important to question the thoughts we're actually having. Are they true? Are they real? Because my mom said it, is it true? Is it necessary? Can it be otherwise? And when we try new thoughts, we can see what kind of effect they have on the system. The program will continue to work because regardless of what you know, new information, it's still in there, in the memory. So therefore we have to see it, perceive it. Aha, it's this thought that is causing my guilt or fear, or just like we see a hand moving or a hand moving an object, we can see a thought stirring up a feeling. I think it's important to realize that the feeling means no further. I can't yield, I can't put it aside. The emotion takes that stance, it takes that position. It doesn't discuss, it doesn't bring up ideas, it just takes this uncomfortable position of I'm not willing to go further. But the intellectual part of it, if it's made visible, it's a reflex of what is necessary. It has to be this way, and the feeling goes along with it. Yes? The feeling is a kind of extension of that thought. But clearly then, trying to get rid of the feeling is a deception, unless the thought that precedes it, that comes first, that generates it, that is the cause, unless that thought changes. And as Bohm points out, necessity is probably the strongest force in the whole system. It will override everything. He says in seminars, in meetings, he has met many people, or several people anyway, who have said that these ideas are very nice in a discussion like this, or when they are spelled out, but in the real world, where you have to make money, where you have to raise children, where you have to go to work, it doesn't work there. But Bohm says this merely means that they are not going to look further into it, they're not going to do it. But looking into it is exactly what is needed in order to make the world real. At this point, further thoughts comes in, says I can't understand it, there's no point in looking into it, what's the whole, why should I do this? These sort of doubts are natural to come in at a certain stage of understanding. This is again the system protecting itself, so to speak. It's boring, it's of no use, nobody is going to have a look at this, life is so stressful. But again, he wants to point out that looking into this is more important than money, work, whatever you'd like to give as an example. So I hope this has somewhat brought out a connection between thought and feeling, even if the video is quite long already. I just want to give the main points as briefly as I can once more. So here they are. What we are talking about is there is a hidden thought, there is a feeling. Usually we want the feeling to go away, but we want to keep the thought that is unseen. Are so strong because of necessity. One necessity is safety and security. Because they are so strong, we don't want the feeling. At the same time, we don't want to look at it. Because if we question it, it is the opposite of what we want. The opposite of what is necessary. Also, the feeling is difficult to look at because it has no obvious role. It doesn't act or reason, it just feels. The only thing we can do is to learn about what is going on. This learning is towards sensitivity, proprioception, connection, intelligence. And intelligence is not the path that thought has chosen. If we look at a perspective of development, evolution and so forth. Thought rather has chosen a path of hiding, hidden, not malicious hiding, but it's hiding, so we don't have to think all our thoughts. It would be very crowded in there, yeah? So, we tend to look for a solution to the effect rather than see the cause and deal with the cause. And the effect is, of course, the feeling. Rather, we generate comforting thoughts. We all like to be comforted. Unfortunately, we realize this is a form of deception. The problem will arise shortly after the comfort. Mm? But we value comfort very much. The reflexes remain. This whole situation is very difficult to look at because what seems to be happening is a need to get rid of a feeling. But we have to go through it the right way, through the thought behind it. And the thought behind it, the most important thing in the whole situation, it goes into hiding. Intelligence moves in a coherent way. Thought and feeling moves in an arbitrary way, meaning that whatever is associated or whatever is triggered pops up and becomes part of the situation. We have to question what is real and true, because the system is filled with things that has just been accepted. We accepted authority. We have to go against our tendency to run away from it all, to go and do something else. There is this insecurity. There is this uncomfort. Furthermore, there is a chemical side to it, set in place a long time ago. A chemical imbalance is disturbing. It's not a strange thing. We can't really criticize feeling uncomfortable because of this. But we can conclude that understanding it won't be enough to set the reflexes straight. So, if we get a grip on this, one major thing that changes is that we don't have all these external causes for our feelings. Rather, what we have is a new idea. Okay, that's the way I think. That's why I feel this way. That's the way I think. I'm watching what the system is doing. And once I bring that out clearly, the system will respond to it. And if we don't put it into words, we will end up calling it an emotional problem or something. But when we say the true words will express what we're actually thinking. The body will respond to it. It will not go on with silly things if you see it. It will demonstrate to us how the system works. So Bohm strongly suggests, if you stay with it, if you stick with it, you will get the impression that this reflex, the initial that is triggering everything, is nothing but a physical process. It's a reflex. And thought, of course, is a big part of it. Okay, thanks for listening.